On December 24th, 2025, Algeria's parliament unanimously passed a law declaring France's 132-year colonization of the North African nation a crime. The Algerians are further demanding a formal apology and reparations from France. Interestingly, this new law also stipulates prison sentences for any Algerian who speaks well of French colonialism or makes, quote, any remarks with colonial connotations. This is what's known as selective outrage. Yes, France colonized Algeria for over a century, but it also brought to that nation's Muslims what they did not have before: functional governance, infrastructure, technology, medicine, and, in a word, progress. Hence why this new law criminalizes speaking well, as many, especially older Algerians, still do, of the colonial era. Moreover, France did give its former colony priority in migration, allowing millions of Algerians to relocate to France for a better life as a form of compensation or reparations. Now ask yourself, what has Algeria done to atone for the centuries of crimes it committed against the Europeans, including the French? For over 300 years, from around the 16th to the early 19th century, the Muslims of North Africa, also known as Barbary, that is, land of the barbarians, thrived on enslaving Europeans. According to the conservative estimate of American professor Robert Davis, quote, between 1530 and 1780, there were almost certainly 1 million and quite possibly as many as 1.25 million white European Christians enslaved by the Muslims of the Barbary coast, end quote. Virtually no part of coastal Europe was safe from these Muslim pirates. From 1627 to 1633, Lundy, an island off the west coast of Britain, was actually occupied by them. From it, they pillaged England at will. In 1627, they raided Denmark and even far-off Iceland, hauling a total of some 800 slaves. In 1631, the fishing village of Baltimore in Ireland was raided and, according to an early source, quote, 237 persons, men, women, and children, even those in the cradle, were seized and taken to the miserable slave markets of North Africa, the most notorious and largest of which was centered in, irony of all ironies, Algeria. Then there were the sadistic torments Christian captives were subjected to. Many, of course, were forced into hard labor in quarries, with barely any food or water. Others were rowers on Ottoman galleys, chained for hours, beaten by their overseers, and worked to death. Women and girls were, of course, sold into concubinage, enduring sexual abuse, as did not a few boys and even men. With countless European women selling for the price of an onion, little wonder by the late 1700s, observers noted how, quote, the inhabitants of Algiers have a rather white complexion. Punishments for those who resisted or in any way spoke negatively of Islam, Muslims, and especially Muhammad, beggared description and included being impaled alive and roasted alive. Other European slaves were, quote, thrown from the city walls and caught upon large, sharp hooks on which they hang till they expire. After a Muslim man tried to engage in homosexual relations with his young male European slave, and the latter, outraged, killed him, the hapless Christian was, quote, dragged to the place of execution over the rough and pointed stones, subjected to the insults of an excited and brutal crowd. On his arrival there, each of the spectators seemed to take a pleasure in assisting at the work. He was crucified against the wall with 4 large nails. A red-hot iron was thrust through his cheeks to prevent him from speaking, and in this condition he was slowly burnt to death with firebrands. Such acts of cruelty were by no means uncommon, says this early source. Nor was America spared. In 1785, Muslim pirates from Algiers captured 2 American vessels. Considering the horrific ways Christian slaves were treated in Barbary, tortured, pressured to convert, and sodomized, as described in the writings I've been quoting from missionaries and redeemers, such as John Fox, Father Dan, Father Jerome Morand, Robert Playfair. If you have my book, Sword and Scimitar, see pages 279 to 283, which have many of their quotes. From here, one can understand why Captain O'Brien, one of the enslaved Americans, later wrote to Thomas Jefferson saying that, quote, our sufferings are beyond our expression or your conception. He was not exaggerating. As ambassadors to France and England, Jefferson and John Adams met with one of Barbary's envoys to Britain, one Abdul Rahman. In a March 28, 1786 letter to Congress, Jefferson explained the source of Barbary's hostility. Quote, We took the liberty to make some inquiries concerning the grounds of their pretensions to make war upon nations who had done them no injury. And we observed that we considered all mankind as our friends, who had done us no wrong, nor had given us any provocation. The ambassador answered us that it was founded on the laws of their prophet, that it was written in their Quran, that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise. And yet here is Algeria today lecturing Western people about morality, branding France a criminal colonizer and demanding reparations because France colonized, that is, civilized Algeria, including by forcing it to stop subsisting on slavery. The irony is staggering. It's not just that Muslims in general had a long history of enslaving Europeans, but that Algeria was arguably the worst of all these Muslim slavers of Europeans. At any given time for 3 centuries, Algiers held tens of thousands of European slaves. Entire coastal regions of France, Italy, and Spain were repeatedly raided, leaving devastation and destruction in their wake. European captives, as we saw, endured unspeakable horrors: torture, forced labor, sexual abuse, starvation, and death. By the way, there's another great irony here. France's entire rationale for invading Algeria in the first place was precisely to put an end to its Muslim slave market, which had for centuries preyed on Europeans. At any rate, and when it comes to reparations, whatever you think of France's colonial history in Algeria, it has at least, and as mentioned, privileged its former colony by allowing millions of Algerians to move to and pursue a better life in France. Meanwhile, what has Algeria done to atone for the millions of Christians it enslaved, tortured, and killed? Nothing. Not a word of apology, not a single dinar in reparations, not even acknowledgement in its school textbooks. Oh, and speaking of reparations, between 1795 and 1800, the United States was forced to spend 16% of its annual federal budget on ransom payments to Algiers in order to release some American sailors and buy a few years of peace, before Algiers became more demanding again and the First Barbary War broke out. So by Algeria's own logic, shouldn't it be making reparation payments to the U.S.? In short, Algeria has just exposed itself in front of the whole world as a shameless hypocrite.